Years ago, I discovered it was possible to create bizarre patterns by pointing a video camera at a monitor. Now, there's nothing new about this. Nearly every person with a camcorder at some time or another created blobby plasmic shapes by pointing a camera at a live TV set. My only twist, and indeed it was a twist, was to rotate the camera slightly off the vertical, thereby creating a reoccurring kaleidoscope of patterns that moved and morphed into a variety of organic shapes and multiple symmetrical patterns. This short selected sample belies a more profound discovery that I've yet really to fully develop. I found that after long concentrated viewing of these images, as I was creating these images, I noticed they had a consciousness-altering effect on me. Not only did I find myself nearly hypnotized as I created the images, I also had an eerie sensation that I was in communication with a kind of intelligence outside myself, that somehow the process was playing me as I was playing it. I first began these experiments 30 years ago, and I have just recently pulled them out of the mothballs and started working with them again. I'm intrigued with the idea that perhaps these images might be able to be manipulated by brainwave patterns to create truly altered states of consciousness. If you're familiar with the work of Terence McKenna, he talks eventually about technology replacing drugs. And as I say, I've never seen anyone do anything like this, and it does have a consciousness-altering effect, particularly if you watch it for a long period of time. In a way, it does mimic certain optic patterns that happen in the eye. The television camera is analogous to the retina too. Try not to space out too much. Most of my life, I've actually been working with other artists. That's probably the thing I'm most passionate about. My experiences at the School of the Art Institute gave me an interest in the collaboration with other artists. Everybody talks about the wonderful days of Picasso and Diaghilev and Nijinsky and all these, the collaboration where people would do sets for other people and work together. In Paris at that time, there was that kind of collaboration. And I've had the experience of working in collaboration with a number of artists, composers, dancers, impresarios or whatever, as well as people in the painting and sculpture. Over the years, this has brought me into contact with some of the most interesting and creative people on the planet. Like many creatives today, I look to the internet for communication, collaboration, and inspiration. Part of it is I still like the one-to-one contact. You live in adjoining lofts and get together once a week to go over projects or things. One is a collage of dance numbers. I've done a lot of documentation of dancing, as well as worked with dancers in more abstract kind of operations. And the second one you've actually seen a lot of. It's Gene Howard's poetry, with a lady I've done a lot of poetic work with.
make that happen. I want you to lose the weight. I want you to get some fun clothing. I want...
Actually, Women Without Children was written as a poem first, and it was written in the dead of Chicago winter with no plants, no life around, but this little orchid in the middle of my house. And so, of course, orchids are very sensual plants, and the whole thing developed as this examination of sensuality, and all of a sudden it got into childbearing, and the next thing I knew I had this really sensual poem about orchids. Now, when I started to work with video, I produced a video with Bob Bolt before, who's produced many and experimented a lot with video, with theater and dance. I talked to him and I said, would you be interested in producing with me? And I showed him 5 or 6 poems, and he chose Women Without Children. And I started relating, as I started thinking of the visuals involved in it, not only the orchids, but I started thinking about my past and the people in my past. And at the time I was thinking about it, I was doing the laundry, and I ran down to get the laundry, and I passed these pictures of my great-grandmother, who is a Mormon polygamist with lots of children. And I just, this flash, this moment of, I have no children, I have this luxurious plant, this orchid, and here is this picture of this, the eyes of this woman that are really the hardships and all of her children. So it was a comparison of our lives. And I talked to Bob about it, Bob Bolt. And we came up with the images, and it incorporates her eyes and her family along with this orchid and all this sensuality. So it really was the poem first, and then the images, and you know, bringing in that aspect of it later. And it turned out to be almost a direct comparison of my life to her life.
Women without children grow orchids, whose fuchsia lips hang down with spittle, the very tips of fragrant vowels. These women hold flower sepals near water and bathe them with mists. They do not wipe at mouths that are always open and slightly obscene. They do not avoid the newborn displaying his sexual parts. Women without children herd the stamens and sticky pistils into the pots, then let them rant free and reckless in front of company. They imagine the instruments of drunken bees as they stagger up from their drop to amber. They worship magenta. Women without children lift the shiny rhizomes, pearlish as boycocks, and feed them to the bark. Fragrant, moist, crumbling to the touch. They stroke green pseudobulbs and veer toward yellow. They lay at night, dreaming of more damp mouths to feed, whose tiny tendrils tumble toward water, whose sticky sneeze leave the kerchief coral, a million minute dots, whose seeds burst forth at her touch.